just got it off. The tweet announcing that we're going live. There's that housekeeping business, and then there's this little glitch in the intro, where all of a sudden there's like, for one frame, you and I appear, and we're like deer in the headlights. And so it's hilarious. We're both like,
I know. Yeah. I have so many tabs open from all these news stories that, when I hit it,
I'm like, dude, the thing is, I could be doing something very untoward in those moments. So and to see, for the nation to see that, I don't, we need to work on that.
Yeah.
It's happened a few times. It's usually just you, fortunately, who's there.
Yeah.
Like doing your deer in headlights, but this time it caught me too. So
chat's lighting up
already.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a discussion about George Michael happening. I don't get it, but
I was just talking about George Michael about, I don't know, a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think about him a lot. You want to talk about George Michael?
Sure.
Do you have feelings about George Michael?
Feelings?
Thoughts?
That song Freedom. I mean, he's got some hits. He's got some bangers.
I mean, goddamn, was he dead when you were born?
No, he died in like 2016.
Okay.
I was around when he got caught in the bathroom, and like that's how I knew him growing up. And then
okay, so you knew that, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
So that's I mean, that's kind of, to me, maybe the biggest thing about George Michael, at least like in terms of his political significance. Yeah, he was one of the last gays to be persecuted by the law in the West. He was in the UK. He was busted having sex in a bathroom in a park, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think somewhere in London or UK. And I think even I forget what happened, but I believe he was convicted of sodomy or whatever the law at the time. And this was like in the 80s, right? I think it was in the 80s.
I think it's fair to have a public indecency for getting a blowjob in a bathroom.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, but the thing is, but that's not, interesting question.
I think his persecution was more in the court of public opinion for being outed as a gay man.
Well, it's just that the laws about public indecency, etc., have always been enacted and enforced against gays having sex in public places. And the reason they had sex in public places when those laws were in place, of course, was that they were horribly proscribed in society and were not allowed to have sex in normal places and were persecuted. So, I mean, it's a tricky one. Like, you're right. Then again, I also don't want two dudes fucking in the stall next to me, you know? Mm-hmm. So I don't know what to do. Do you have a policy prescription? Or
do I have a policy prescription? Well, I have advocated for the return of sodomy laws at the local level.
Yeah.
On this show.
I just was thinking about this because Mike Johnson, our new Speaker of the House, is a decentralist, and he thinks that a lot of the big morality issues should be settled at the state level. So,
really,
yeah, and I agree. Me too. Like, I'm a pro-choice guy, I think, but like, mm-hmm. I'm all for letting states decide on their own.
Nice. Nice.
I have a cold, by the way. So my voice is in and out. I've got the good juice here, but I might not be able to finish this. Hopefully my voice will clear up, but just so you know. Anyway, should we talk about the darkness first? Get that out of the way, or or no?
There's a lot of angles to attack the darkness that
you know what?
Do you want to talk about hostages being released, or do you want to talk about the drone strikes that potentially hit?
Okay, so you do want to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna have a cough drop while you prepare yourself emotionally.
Okay.
Okay. Take some breaths.
Mm-hmm.
Think fondly about your communist friends you were talking about last week.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, This week, the last 4 or 5 days, has been pivotal in some big ways that are of importance to Americans. And I strongly encourage everyone who is an American to look at this issue through self-interested lens. As an American, do I want my country, my government, to participate in this thing in any way? That's it. That's the only position I take on this whole issue. I'm not anti-Israel, pro-Israel. I just don't want to support it. I don't want to support necessarily the Palestinians either. I mean, the government, my government, to do that. So this week, what we have seen is Biden and Blinken, the foreign policy establishment here, double down on its commitment rhetorically to supporting Israel and not even mentioning what is happening in Gaza. I don't think Biden, maybe he sort of obliquely referenced it, but there's been no mention of the 7,000 it is now dead civilians over there. And then also, and this is where it gets very scary and very real for us, is that 14,000 troops, U.S. troops, have been sent to the coast of Israel. Sorry, not just the coast, also Syria and Iraq, where we still have bases. And then get this.
Sorry, where'd you get that 14,000 number from?
It's in the news. I mean, this is, he definitely sent, I know it's 13,500 on the initial deployment. And then it was another like 500 or so.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's right around there. But
Okay.
Get this, but it's also, originally it was one carrier group, the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
And then I just saw yesterday or 2 days ago, Biden has quadrupled that almost. So there's now 2 carrier groups and then like 4 other battleship formations. So it's like 4 or 5 destroyers, each with Tomahawk missiles that can destroy like whole towns. And then you have bases in Syria and Iraq that have never left. They've always been there with U.S. troops protecting the oil in the north. And they've been buttressed. Troops have moved in there. A lot of special ops guys are based there because that's sort of central. And they're still fighting like remnants of ISIS, etc. But then China has moved some units into the area, as has Russia. Now, no one is saying that those are going to fight anytime soon, but we now have a situation that's full of flashpoints and triggers. We have all these ships in the Mediterranean that could be attacked in all sorts of ways. It's like something like, it's around 20 big naval ships in the Mediterranean with the flag on it, with the American flag on it. And then all these troops, some of whom will be on those ships and some will be on the ground. And again, new targets. And again, if we get targeted, if the U.S. gets targeted in any way, it all changes. We don't know what direction it would go in, but it depends on who targets us and how they target us. But that, of course, could very easily lead to a direct conflict with Russia or China, because Iran is very much in the region, has at least agents all over Gaza and the West Bank. We know that, and Lebanon, and has a very formidable army and I just found out they have a missile system apparently that is like one of the best in the world. I didn't know that, but and they, of course, support Hamas and Hezbollah. And Israel has been eager to destroy Iran since 1979. So you have proxies. Syria is also aligned with Iran and Russia, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all sorts of trigger points now all sorts of military weaponry, like ships and people, troops who could be hit by multitude of actors, all of whom are connected to other actors in the region. And meanwhile, you have, amazingly, this is new, something like 80 to 90% of the United Nations totally siding with Palestine, totally siding. And the UN Secretary General today and yesterday, I think, gave 2 very strong speeches denouncing Israel and Gaza, but while also, of course, saying what you're supposed to say, which is that we also condemn whatever it was, we still don't know, by the way, and that's another topic here, to the Israeli civilians on October 7th. And this is a fascinating thing. And it's very difficult to talk about, of course, because you get shouted down as a monster just for raising questions about it, which is interesting because I don't want there to have been civilians killed on October 7th. But people get very mad at me when I say there weren't. They seem to want there to have been civilians killed. And they especially want there to have been 40 babies who were beheaded by Arab savages. To this day, right? To just an hour ago, I heard some Israeli IDF spokesman talk about beheaded babies. I'm like, show me the evidence. And then rape. They talk about rape. Every other word is rape. Zero evidence of rape so far. I asked you last week what you have seen in terms of direct, clear evidence of civilian atrocities. And I still now have seen, and by the way, the IDF released a bunch of it, not released, they showed a bunch of journalists on Monday footage of the worst footage that they have. And they listed what was in it. They didn't show it, which is odd. So we can't see it. They won't let us see it, which is odd. But they did list what was in it. And it was one beheaded Thai worker, an IDF soldier, sorry. But very clearly his head could have been taken off by an IED. So it sort of looked like that because there was very little blood around. It was very cleanly taken off. So, that's it. I mean, and no babies, no rape, no evidence of any of that. There was evidence of, they said, Burns' baby children. So that certainly happened, I think, that they at least burned buildings with civilians in them. Here's the thing, though, and I've seen shooting of maybe half a dozen people. I've seen shootings of Hamas fighters shooting people. And now I have not seen the shooting of anyone who is clearly, definitely a civilian. And remember, the IDF has bases all around there. Right next to all those kibbutzim are huge IDF bases, which is what Hamas was going after. So there were IDF soldiers everywhere. Then, of course, we know that there's universal conscription in Israel. So every Israeli adult is either in the IDF or has been in the IDF and knows how to use a gun and often has a gun. So it's very unclear to me how many civilians were actually killed. I think clearly some were, but so far, all the evidence I've seen, guess what? Crossfire, accidental killings could account for every one of them that I've seen. Some of the men who were shot at the festival, or apparently at the festival, it's not for sure that they weren't IDF. I don't know. So I think this is why Israel, to this day, and every one of its spokespeople talks about beheaded babies and raped women every other sentence to this day, even though there is zero evidence. Because I think if you really boiled it down and found out the actual numbers and how civilians were killed and how many were killed, guess what it's going to look like? It's going to look like your average sort of Israeli raid on a West Bank village, which happens all the time, in which they kill a whole bunch of Hamas fighters, and along the way, 5 or 10 or 20 civilians, many of whom are children. They don't intend to kill children. I know that. They don't want to kill children, the IDF, but they do. And I think it's going to look a lot like that if we were to find out the actual facts. Now, IDF raids on West Bank villages, to me, are all war crimes. And so is this. But it's the same kind of war crime as far as I can tell. I haven't seen anything extraordinary about it. The only thing extraordinary about it is that Hamas made announcements of its intentions. I don't know if they announced an intention to attack civilians, though. But, you know, they did have these videos out that they took themselves and then promoted, which the IDF is saying is of civilians. But again, I don't know for sure, because I've seen half a dozen, I think, men being shot for sure, to death for sure. But like, I don't know what they're wearing. I can't really see that clearly. I don't know who they are. And they could very well be IDF. I mean, they're mostly young men that I've seen getting shot, but even middle-aged men are often in the IDF. I mean, it's a militarized society. This is true. So I think that's why they keep pounding away at this beheaded babies and raped women thing. I mean,
well, the line I hear is the worst attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust.
Right.
That's the statement they're using.
Right. I mean, the wars 67, 73, 48, pretty bad. I don't know. I think they're a lot worse than this. I mean, those were multiple thousands of Jews in each one of those wars. So this is not that. But again, I do think, I'll bet you that a large proportion of the people killed were IDF soldiers or ex-IDF with a gun, one or the other. You know, there's that video of that Hamas fighter on the kibbutz getting shot. Like you hear the gunshot and then he just falls and starts like muttering to himself as he's dying. But like that shot we don't know who the shot came from, but that was like one of the early incursions into the kibbutz. So they had weapons, they had security there who were all IDF soldiers, you know, at the kibbutz. Like, I don't know. I don't buy it. I mean, I know that there were civilians killed. I'm positive. And I'm positive there were children killed. I think it's way fewer than we've been told. And I just think there's a way bigger proportion of IDF who are in those numbers. And I do think my main point is that I think the reason Israel keeps lying about these beheaded babies and raped women is that they need to make it extraordinary, because what they actually have on their hands is just another regular battle in this long war. Every battle's looked like this on both sides, basically. There's always been civilian killing on both sides. Always way more Palestinian civilians dead, but always there have been both. And they don't want to do that because that will then force them to talk about history. And when they talk about history, it gets very dicey for the Israeli Zionist cause. And this is why right now we are seeing this massive shift. This is historic. And if I were Israeli, I would be, for the first time since 1973, really worried about the continued existence of the state of Israel, not because it's going to get attacked from without necessarily, but because world opinion really has shifted. It's not just these radical college students who are pro-Palestine. It is, as I said, it's like 80 to 90% of the United Nations, meaning of the countries of the world. The governments of the countries of the world are firmly anti-Israel, including major countries like Brazil. Lula just called it an act of genocide, what's happening in Gaza.
Oh, Spain?
Yeah, like NATO countries and EU countries even are not towing the line on this. It's only the EU, some of the EU and the US are still back in Israel. That's all they got. They really are isolated. Henry Kissinger in 1975 gave this speech I've talked about a lot. He said, the Jews historically have had this tendency to create conditions that harm themselves. And then they blame others for it. Then they blame anti-Semitism for it. Henry Kissinger, who escaped the Holocaust, so I think he can speak on this. And that's what they're doing. I think they have isolated themselves. Zionists, we should say. Jews and Zionists are different things. I said this last week, but all the greatest anti-Zionists that I know are Jewish. There's also a whole lot of Zionist Christians who are bizarre. You ever known any Zionist Christians?
Oh, well, I've known a lot of
Weird.
Christians who take the Zionist position as a default, who aren't super learned or passionate about the issue, but just automatically see Israel as rightfully a Jewish homeland and automatically see them on the side of Western civilization and being attacked by, terrorist outsiders.
Yeah, they're powerful now. I mean, there's a lot of them. I just watched this guy debate Norman Finkelstein, who's one of them, and they're really big and have a lot of money, and they're very major backers of Israel. Get this, dude.
Oh, well,
This.
Mike Pence was very much like that.
Oh, yeah. all the like standard Republican, actually even the MAGA guys are all pro-Israel too. Yeah. Get this. Christian evangelicals are the ones who invented Zionism. It was their idea in the 1820s and 30s in Britain and the United States. A group of evangelicals, there was a debate among Christian evangelicals about this. I think it's called the Great Reclamation. The idea was you move the Jews back to Israel, which will precipitate the coming of Christ.
Yeah.
Which will then bring about the destruction of the Jews. A lot of them had that theology going on. That's what they were about. And that's why they supported Zionism and the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine, because it would bring about the second coming and then do away with the Jews.
I wish more people would talk about this. Well, not do away with the Jews. They'll get raptured.
Well, right. I mean, they'll cease to be Jewish.
Yeah,
is the point, right?
Yeah, but
it's not a pro-Jewish angle, is my point.
No, yeah, it's a very self-interested thing.
Yeah.
It's their own theology that they're hoping for.
So get this. So it begins with the Christian evangelicals. They invent the idea. This is like 60 years before Theodore Herzl even was alive, who's considered the founder of modern Zionism. This is way before Herzl. They basically they trained Herzl. They educated Herzl. He was deep with the Christians on this stuff. The next major founder of the state of Israel after evangelical Christians was in the 1930s, was Nazi Germany. I've talked about this too, right? The Havara Transfer Agreement, 50,000 Jews. The Nazis paid to send them to Palestine to establish the state of Israel in the 1930s because they wanted to get rid of their Jews. There's books written about this. So Christian evangelicals and Nazis are your founders, bro. I mean, it's true. Like, not just them, of course, but like, if you've got those two as major founding organizations, you might want to think about it, what you're up to here. And if I wanted to kill a bunch of Jews, like say 16 or 17,000, say, I would send them all to Palestine in about 1948 and say, yeah, establish an ethno-state here, which requires the permanent displacement of half the population or 2/3 of the population. Do that. That's a way to kill some Jews. And that's exactly what happened. 16,000 of them have been killed in the process of establishing and maintaining that ethno-state.
Are you familiar with the work of Shlomo Sands from Tel Aviv University?
No, not at all.
Scott Horton brought him up, and apparently Shlomo Sands went to like some famous rabbi archives in Israel and asked about the Roman expulsion. You know, the famous Roman expulsion, that Israel was originally their homeland and the Romans expelled them at first. And this is the justification for Israel being a Jewish state, is
right. 70
Roman
AD, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, yeah, we don't have any documents about that. There's kind of like no real evidence for that. It's kind of a folktale.
That the Roman expulsion didn't happen?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Apparently that's Shlomo Sands, Tel Aviv University. Yeah.
I'm going deep here. I mean, to me, like, if you need to go biblical on this issue, there's no point in talking. I mean,
well, yeah. What other like land dispute, like warfare land dispute goes back thousands of years to make your claim.
Tell you what,
like this. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Every hardcore Zionist basically finishes there, though, in their argumentation. They kind of get beaten on a lot of the arguments, and then they end up there. I mean, if you listen to like settlers talk, like Israeli settlers in the occupied territories, that's how they always talk. It's always about like biblical times. This is our people's land. It's always been our land. It's, you know, it's our holy land. It belongs to us. Under this earth is our ancestors' bones. Is that kind of shit. I'm like, well, I mean, if you have to go back 2,000 plus years to establish some proprietary claim on land, I mean, I don't know there's no point in arguing because that's endless. I'd rather talk about the last 100 years when it all happened. 200 years, since it's 200 years since Christian evangelicals invented the idea of Zionism. To contain the Jews also, if you want to like keep them in one place.
This is a question I wanted to ask you. So the Nietzschean argument for the state of Israel.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So this is BAP territory.
Yeah. I'm not sure if BAP explicitly is pro-Israel in this way, but I've heard a lot of dissident right people argue this point. And Cornelius last week was kind of making this point. But take morality out of it.
Unregistered live, you mean?
Yeah,
we had a little debate about this. Yeah.
But the idea that Israel is just the stronger side, and they represent strength, and there's no virtue in weakness, and let's end this little thorn at our side with the Palestinians, and just win this war once and for all, and have a modern, progressive, liberal, civilized state here once and for all.
That's very brilliant and very original. Wow. I need to process that.
That's an argument I see that argument being made, and there's a lot of people on the right saying we need to abandon this whole rightful Holocaust, rightful land thing. Get rid of all the moralizing, all the victim stuff. Just say we deserve it because we're better than you.
Oh fuck!
Yeah,
you do hear that sometimes. I mean, that is a part of the argument.
It is a part.
The big part of the argument is they say, the land was undeveloped, uncultivated under the Palestinians, and they were broke and were doing nothing. And the Jews came along and made it all prosperous, which I guess is at least partly true. So and we basically just outdid the Arabs, and therefore we deserve it. That's a Lockean argument, by the way. That's a John Locke argument.
Virtue.
When you mix your labor with the soil, it becomes your property. That's what confers property rights. Total mysticism, whatever. But anyway, that's what our country was founded on. And every classical liberal and libertarian loves it, and they're like, never even think about that as being just a fat fucking piece of mysticism. But anyway, it's like, oh yeah, who says who, John Locke? Like, what do you mean? What? This is just your little like made up formula, but you're acting like it's what God intended. Okay. Israel, the Nietzschean case for the state of Israel. Whoa. Because we are our people, the Zionists, the Israelis, we're simply stronger, smarter, more productive, better, more organized, possessed all the masculine virtues, and our women possess a lot of feminine virtues, famously. So yeah, I like it. I like the argument. And also, I'm thinking about I'm thinking about the psychodynamics of the issue, like the ways I have felt in the last couple of weeks and how I've always felt about the issue and the way a lot of people have felt about it. It's powerful, and I sort of watch myself feeling these things. And there is very much an association, an identification, and a celebration of the underdog, of the lesser party, the weaker party, right? The Palestinians. I feel we all feel so terrible, those of us on this side, about the Palestinians. But we should, Nietzsche would say, not identify with okay, I was wondering. I've just been riffing, assuming you would. Yeah, I mean, so it's about identifying, so many of us identify with the Palestinians, right? Our hearts are with the Palestinians. We feel for them. We identify with them. We valorize them. We wear their flag. We cry when they die because they are the underdogs. They are the weaker party here, right? They are the oppressed. Nietzsche says, no, that's slave mentality. You know, if you side with the loser, even if they're like virtuous for some reason, that makes you what? A loser. So maybe you'll be a virtuous loser according to the morality of the time, Nietzsche would say, but you're just going to be a virtuous loser. You'll end up in a place like Gaza getting bombed every 2 years, you know, and living in poverty. There's something to be said for that, Michael. You should write to BAP, Bronze Age Pervert, and inform him of what his argument should be about Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's correct. I think that's what the what do you call BAP? What category is he in?
You could say dissident right, art right. You can call him if you. But again, like Gio, I see him entirely as an artistic force.
Yeah,
he is Nietzschean.
Yeah, he's a king of the alt-right, the Nietzschean alt-right. Yeah. God, that's fast. I'm gonna chew on that one. Mm-hmm. Who has said something like this?
I don't want to name handles off the top of my head, but
you've seen it floating around.
I've seen the argument floating around. Red Scare, for example, was saying that
that makes sense.
Their entire disposition towards this whole conflict is that the pro-Palestinians are antisocial losers, and so they're just repulsed by. Why would anybody be pro-Palestine? You're siding with antisocial losers.
Wait, does that mean Palestinians are antisocial losers? Like the people who live in Gaza? Like, what? I don't quite get it. I mean, so here's a frustration I've had.
Yeah.
Major frustration I've had with the pro-Israel side. You notice this? They seem to only talk about the pro-Palestinian side. They don't talk about the actual issue.
Yeah.
They don't talk about Israel and Palestine ever. They talk about this Harvard student who said that thing about from the river to the sea, and that NYU student who refused to condemn the Hamas atrocities. And, you know, it's all about these like lefties, basically. And Noam Chomsky, the stupid thing he said, and how horrible it is that the New York Times believed Hamas about the hospital. By the way, I
think that was more incompetence than ideological.
What?
How Hamas? I mean, how the New York Times reported on that hospital bombing.
Well, first of all, I am still convinced that the IDF attempted to bomb that hospital and just missed it by a meter and hit the parking lot and killed at least 50 people, maybe 300 people. Mm-hmm. American intelligence says they believe it could be 300 people who were killed in that strike. So because they hit the parking lot and not the hospital and killed all these hundreds of civilians in the parking lot, that means it's all okay? Like what?
Well, to be fair, the New York Times printed a photo of a bombed out building that wasn't the hospital to give the impression that the hospital was bombed.
I didn't know that.
And that's, again, I think that's just the New York Times has horrible journalistic practices, and if it bleeds, it leads. I think that's all that is.
They just fucked up. I mean, and by the way, the idea that the New York Times is like pro-Palestinian is hilarious. I mean, that is, they have carried water for Israel forever. When it comes down to it, on the major questions, they're always pro-Israel. So now, but all the talk has been that I've seen, including among a bunch of people I know, a bunch of friends of mine, has been about how horrible the left is about this. Oh my God, they'll take down those posters of the hostages. Oh my God, they're so terrible. And these marches and these chants and and they're anti-Semitic. And it's like, well, do you want to talk about like what's happening in Israel and Gaza instead? Like, because that's what we care about. They don't. I want to have an argument with Barry Weiss about this. All she does is post, horror stories about what happened to people on October 7th. Half of which have been debunked, by the way. So, but like, I'm happy to talk about atrocities. I've talked about some atrocities too. Please do that. I want to hear about all of them. But can we talk about like why it happened? And they don't want to talk about that. Instead, they just want to say those people are monsters. That's it. That's their analysis. That's why this happened, Michael. Those people are monsters. Period. Well, that's racism. That's just racism. I mean, maybe Palestinians are just born differently somehow. I tend to think it's the conditions they're born into that leads them to do just things like this. But it's just racism to have no analysis whatsoever about why they would do this kind of thing, except to say that it's characterological. Palestinians are just bad people. It's racism.
Well,
wow.
The worst argument is that they voted for Hamas in 2006. So
Right. So first of all, it was a close election. Second of all, Hamas, I think, only got a plurality. I think it was like 30% or something like that. Maybe not even.
Third of all, most of the people who voted in that aren't alive, and
half the people currently living in Gaza were not born then. Half the population, more than 1 million people, have never left Gaza. That's when the blockade began, 2006. Jesus H. Fucking Christ. I know. I saw the list. I started perusing the list of the dead.
Well, real quick, even if Hamas won in a landslide 95% election, that doesn't mean that these people are collectively guilty for the actions of their government.
What about all the people who voted against them?
Yeah.
Which was a lot of people, or just didn't vote. That we should kill them too? Like,
yeah. What if like somebody wants to collectively punish the United States for the actions of Biden and Obama?
Right. Or like, yeah, the 5 Syrians, whatever, who were killed by Trump's Tomahawk missile. They think all Americans should die for that. Even though it's Donald Trump, even though it's whatever, it's equivalent to that.
That's why Osama bin Laden went after U.S. civilians in 9/11. We collectively voted our government in. We supported all these policies that starved to death his friends in the Middle East.
Yeah,
we're collectively guilty. And also, I brought this up last week too, but Israeli officials keep bringing up the bombing of Dresden as if that was something that was entirely justified. Like they're literally comparing the bombing of Gaza to the bombing of Dresden as a good thing, as a model. Yeah,
it's sexy to them for some, some sort of good reasons and sort of not good reasons. I mean, killing a whole shitload of Germans is kind of sexy to a lot of Israelis. Thing is, 95% of those Germans weren't Nazis, but whatever. And also a lot of Jews were killed in that too. There were still Jews in Dresden. So yeah, no, they want to go off, of course. I mean, so 50% of Israel is hard right now, hard right wing, and that's why we have an insane far right settler government. So, a lot of people don't know this. So Netanyahu established Netanyahu, the chocolate drink. It's delicious. He established a new government in November, December last year. So it's a new government, and it's like an unprecedentedly right-wing government that has these fanatical settlers as his minister of security and of finance. Smotrich is finance, and Ben Gvir is security. These dudes are like the hill people, these settlers who go out and, they're just gangs, and they go out and fight the Palestinians in the hills and steal their land and take these. They're all illegal settlements. Everyone agrees these are illegal settlements. These guys are openly racist. They just they totally want genocide of the Palestinians. They're upfront about it. Their children are just the biggest maniacs in the world. There's a great YouTube documentary on the Hill Kids, I think they're called. These are the settler kids. They're like teenagers who they're little gangsters. And they burn Palestinian homes. They kill people. They've killed children. Oh my goodness. That's where this government comes from. This super hard right-wing, racist, genocidal, anti-Palestinian shit. So that faction, which is now just a majority basically of Israeli society, I think, they want to go off. They don't want to I'm sure many of them wouldn't mind killing every single one of them, all 2 million. I'm sure there's a healthy portion of Israeli society that would like that. Not all. I mean, a lot of Israelis are peaceniks, by the way. Let's be really clear. In fact, and a lot of the people who were killed, and a terrible irony, were peaceniks. Very, very pro-Palestinian people. There was a big left-wing, big peace movement in Israel until the 1990s, until the Second Intifada, kind of convinced Israelis, and this is the main thing I want to say, convinced most Israelis for the first time that Palestinians would never accept the state of Israel. Until the 1990s, there was always a very large peace movement that believed in Palestinian desire for a two-state solution, that Palestinians overwhelmingly would choose two states and allow the state of Israel to exist. I think that's wrong. I think Netanyahu's insane right-wing government is correct about that. I think the vast majority of Palestinians do not accept the existence of the state of Israel. I do think the Hamas charter, the Hezbollah charter, which famously call for the destruction of Israel, do in fact, they just do in fact represent the beliefs of most Palestinians. I do think that.
Do you think if it was redrawn to like the 1967 borders, Palestine,
even then, I think even with I know that's what was the sort of the peace movement from 67 until the 90s. That's what they always said. We give them back the occupied territories, right? That's the cause of the conflict. That's the cause of the terrorism. So we give them back that and everything will be okay. Now that hasn't been done, so I may not be right about this, but I just don't think so. I mean, it's the rhetoric and the actions and also the actions of Israel by promoting these settlements has inflamed people to want to destroy all of Israel too, because they're not going to give back those occupied territories. They have hundreds of thousands of Israeli settlers living in the occupied territories with permanent homes, like so why would you even entertain this as a possibility that the occupied territories can come back to you? No, go for the whole eliminate the entire thing, which is the root of the entire problem for Palestinians. So it's perfectly logical. Any American who was in the Palestinian position as of 1948 would completely be on would agree with this 100%. It's colonization. There were I looked at the numbers on this. This is key stuff here. The number of Jews living in Palestine in 1900, 20,000. 20,000. 500,000 Arabs and 100,000 Christians. So 600,000 Palestinians, basically Arabs. 600,000 Arabs and 20,000 Jews in 1900. That's where the Zionist movement started. When the Zionist movement started, that's what it was. They looked at that place and was like, oh, we're going to make that our homeland. And then over the next 30, 40 years, Zionist European Jews flooded in, some from the Holocaust, but most just from Europe in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And that's who it is. And they colonized the fucking place in about 3 decades. That's it. So it went from 20,000 Jews to 600,000 Jews in 40 years. And those are colonial settlers. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's just what it is. Now you can argue on behalf of colonialism, because they did improve the land. They did cultivate it. They did make it prosperous. They did establish Israel as a vibrant economy, for sure. But, I thought we were in the West against that kind of thing. And it was violent too. It was a violent takeover. So I don't know. But then again, if you're a Nietzschean, you would, the conquerors are the great men of history. And yes, what many Israelis will tell you is this land is prosperous. It was not under the Arabs, and they're right about that. So would you rather this have been left to the Palestinians and it would still be just basically a blank desert? Like, would you rather we have left America to the natives who didn't do a damn thing with this fertile plain? No. I mean, a Nietzschean, or maybe just a rational person would say, fuck no, good thing they got replaced by people who are productive and heroic, like Bronze Age Pervert. Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a big meta analysis, though. I love that. That's good.
Yeah. There's another Nietzschean argument that Europe should like flatten both Israel and Palestine in some giant show of force, saying stop bickering, stop fighting, we're in charge now. Like stop. Yeah.
Like super colonialism.
Yeah.
You
Like
colonize the colonizers.
Like the Roman Empire would, like as if like some regional faction was fighting amongst each other and disrupting the peace and trade for the region.
Well, that's actually, it's not going to be Europe. It's going to be China or Russia.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing right now. China and Russia are trying to get in on this and trying to become the brokers. That's what China is clearly doing now. It's really interesting. They're trying to intervene in these conflicts, Ukraine and Israel, and trying to be, and Saudi Arabia, that whole thing. They just brokered that deal with Iran between Saudi and Iran. That was China. That's a new thing to replace the United States, boy, like as the world's like arbiter and cop and judge and deal maker and alliance leader. This is a big deal. And so we don't know if they'll get there, but like China and Russia are trying to become the man in the Middle East. It was France. It was the UK. Then after World War II was France. And then after the 67 war, it was the US, who were basically the big superpowers, more or less controlling things in the Middle East. But now we'll see if Russia and China can move in. They're certainly trying to.
I want to talk about the speech that Biden gave. A lot of people probably didn't see it because it was while we were airing, so didn't have that much viewership. But I want to frame it with this. Let me pull it up. You were talking about darkness. The war in Israel has been framed as a battle of light against dark.
Netanyahu said that.
Yeah, Netanyahu said that. Israel, like literally Israel's public relations at Twitter, at X, put this out. A graphic of Voldemort repulsed at his own phone with the caption, Hamas redefines evil, Hamas equals ISIS. Can you see that?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, go spend 5 minutes on Instagram looking at Gaza videos from Gaza. It's just not even close. But
and then the caption also reads, watch the evidence, Hamas-massacre.com. I tried to go there, and apparently the server's not working there or something. I'm curious if anybody's actually accessed Hamas-massacre.com. So if anybody in the chat's been there, let me know.
I don't know, man. The hostage who was released, the 85-year-old woman.
Oh yeah,
she did say it was a little contradictory. She said she was really treated well, and you saw her saying shalom and shaking hands with her Hamas captor when she's leaving him. And but she said mostly that they were treated very well. But she did say she was beaten when she was taken. So I don't know exactly what that means. I mean, she's very frail, so I mean, any beating would have done major damage to her. So I don't know, but and Hamas has repeatedly said that they did not target civilians. Now, I think that's probably mostly right. I'm sure there were some Hamas fighters who took pot shots at civilians. I have no doubt about it. But I think Hamas as an organization probably did not. I think they did want to just attack the military bases. Plenty of military bases to attack around there. I don't know, but like people would just freak out on me to hear this.
Or, I mean, it's believable that they took. I mean, I think they took a lot of hostages with.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Idea that there are negotiating chips.
Also a war crime. Also a war crime. No doubt about it. 100% against that. But again, like, oh, well, let's talk about hostages. Okay. I mean, it's not a tit for tat thing. It's about understanding that that the context of this is a 75-year war, or at least a 56-year war, at least in 67. It's a fucking war. Ongoing every 2 years, there's been a bombardment of Gaza. Every 2 years, like thousands of people have been killed. This is the latest bombardment. I forget what we're saying.
Oh, the hostages.
Oh, to understand the context of that, the reason that they took hostages, and they've said this, was to bargain, to get their own hostages out. Now, there are, I think it's 6,000, or there were 6,000 Palestinians in prisons in Israel on October 7th. I think it's like doubled now or something like that, but like 6,000. Some of those people killed Israelis, no doubt about it. A lot of them didn't. The point is, many of them, I don't know how many, but I think thousands of them have still not been charged. That means they're hostages. Charge them in a court of law with something if you want to keep them, but they haven't. So that makes them effectively hostages, thousands. And also, I think there's about 100 children, Palestinian children, in Israeli prisons. So that's how you're going to get those people back unless you take some of theirs.
Well, beyond that, if the 2 American women hostages were released, and if these 2 elderly hostages were released, and these were negotiated with, doesn't that mean that Hamas can be negotiated with, that these aren't completely unreasonable savages only intent on killing?
They've negotiated before. They took that Israeli soldier, Gilad, what's his name? Gilad Gilad, something like that. Anyway, held him for 5 years. They kidnapped an IDF soldier and held him for 5 years, and then traded him for something like 2,000 or 500 Palestinian prisoners. So they've done it before. There's been negotiations with Hamas, successful. They just won a lot because a lot has been taken. A lot of land and a lot of people have been taken.
And then before I get to the Biden speech, I do have a clip of Jimmy Carter. I'm not sure if I want to play it, but
I want to say just one thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are scrambling to learn about this stuff, as am I. I mean, I have found one really good source of fast information, actually about all of it, which is that Al Jazeera has produced a bunch of really good short documentaries, like 10 to 20 minutes long, on all the topics, all the major subjects in the history of Israel, Palestine. There's great stuff. Vice and Vox have too.
Mhm.
But if you go on YouTube, you can find some really good stuff. All the major conflicts, battles, issues, the history, the timeline, the people. Now, yeah, Al Jazeera is owned by the Qatar government. And they have some kind of connection to Hamas, but I watch Al Jazeera all the time now.
Well,
judge it for yourself.
So does the United States and Israeli government.
Yeah, I mean, they're actually pretty respectable. I mean, I think they're pretty straightforward. Yes, they are biased, of course, against Israel, but not to the point where they have Israeli spokespeople on the show all the time, on Al Jazeera all the time. You get both sides all the time. So I strongly recommend Al Jazeera, but check out their documentaries on YouTube. Really good.
Mm-hmm. So on that note about history, George Bush in like 2008, signed a peace resolution and said that he was moving towards a 2-state solution. Jimmy Carter has all his entire career has tried to push for a 2-state solution. Bill Clinton did in the 90s. Various statesmen from Egypt, all over the world, have tried to solve this problem, and like the consensus was that a good statesman eventually will negotiate a 2-state solution. I think that was kind of like a large consensus or an aspiration at the very least. I think that how rabid the press is and how rabid Congress is about this issue being completely pro-Israel in this way is a new development.
Yeah. I mean, the 2-state solution is done. It's over. It's impossible. You can't, it's physically impossible with the settlements there. You would have to, what is it now? 600,000, something like that. People live in illegal settlements. It's many hundreds of thousands of people. And it is large buildings. I've seen these picture in the course on Israel Palestine that we have at the academy. I have pictures of these settlements, and they're just like amazing. They look like apartment blocks in New York City. Some of them like huge apartment, like blocks of huge apartment buildings. That all has to be removed, demolished, and all the people have to be taken out. And those people all are armed and crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be a massive war. It's impossible. So discussion of the two-state solution is not even, it's silly at this point. And this again is why, yeah, the only thing people have left is to call for from the river to the sea.
Either side. Either side has to be river to the sea.
Yeah, because it's really apocalyptic. It's really scary. I think most likely, I don't know. It's sort of, boy, I could see, as I said earlier, I mean, because public opinion, world opinion is against Israel so firmly for the first time.
Yeah.
I could see significant numbers of Israelis out migrating. Not enough to actually hollow out the state, I don't think, but I think it could become significant. I think more likely, though, is that there's going to be some kind of deal brokered by somebody like China in which Arab states and maybe some other countries allow the Gazans in.
Mm-hmm.
We need to distribute 2 million people, and that's got to happen. I mean, now it could be that like half of those people are dead by then, like literally, but from starvation, who knows? But like, that's, Israel is clearly pushing for that. That's what they want. That's what they want to happen. They want to push them out entirely of Gaza and take it over, and make it into Tel Aviv South. But that requires other countries to take in all these crazy Palestinians who do not have the greatest reputation in the world. So I wonder if China and or Russia will step up with all their land. Think about how much empty land those countries have. Maybe they should bring the Gazans in and be the heroes of this. They could do it. I mean, they actually have the ability. You know, bringing 2 million Palestinians to the United States is not going to happen. But China and Russia got a lot of space, man. And they got a lot of,
do it.
Sure, easy. And they have a lot of resources. And they want to be, but the point is, they want to become the major players on the world stage. They want to be the big dude in geopolitics. And that would be a great way to do it, to actually finally solve the conflict, move all the Gazans to Western China. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to have to be something like that. It's going to have to be some multinational cooperative project to move them all out, because we're not going to stop Israel from doing the ethnic cleansing, which is what they're doing. This is ethnic cleansing. There's no doubt about it. They want to push those people out, and that's it. And then they're going to work on the West Bank, which is an even nastier little hornet's nest. There's some amazing, people should go look at some documentaries about what life is like in West Bank cities like Nablus and Ramallah and Hebron. Hebron is insane because the settlers are inside the city. And so there's all these checkpoints. There's like 20 checkpoints inside Hebron, manned by IDF soldiers, and Palestinians have to go through the checkpoint, and they can be held at any moment, can be stopped from going to their house or to their work or to see a family member, to go to the hospital. It's absolute apartheid. There's just no doubt about it. There's security cameras everywhere. IDF patrol the streets, segregating Palestinians from Israelis. Totally separate justice, system of justice for the settlers and the Palestinians. It's incredible. And then Nablus and Ramallah are the center of the resistance. So you have these amazing, like crazy, these are Byzantine medieval cities, you know, with these little Byzantine alleyways, and there's like lots of Hamas and lots of other militants running around, and the headquarters are there, and it is wild. And the IDF runs raids in on a regular basis, shooting up the place and taking people, kidnapping people, and It is just ridiculous. It is just the most horrific place on earth, and it has been for decades. And it's because, again, we thought it was important to have a Jewish ethno-state in Arabia. That's what you get.
Mhm.
I wish it would go away.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat pointed out, I brought up Shlomo Sand earlier. His work also points out that like the Palestinians that live in Israel, his theory is those people are most likely the ethnic Jews that lived in that area when it was called Israel thousands of years ago.
The Israelites, I mean?
Yeah, the Israelites, the Hebrews, whatever. The Semitic people of the region, you know, but they just converted to Islam. Like they're the same people ethnically. They were just there and they converted to Islam.
Yeah, that's one of the funny things about the conflict. I often think about this. I'm like, how do you all know who's a Palestinian and who's an Israeli?
Mm-hmm.
You know, 2/3 of y'all look the same. I mean, there are like the Ashkenazi Jews look like me, but there's a bunch of Israelis who completely pass as Arabs, and that's who works in doing the undercover work. You know, they have all sorts of Israeli agents like in Palestine because they look Arab. Mizrahi Jews, they look like Arabs. They're brown as hell. And then there's like, I've seen like lots of IDF soldiers who are black, like African. There's quite a few. I guess they're Ethiopian Jews.
Yeah.
Significant number of African Jews in Israel too. It is wild. So
yeah.
Anyone?
Man, so I brought up Voldemort in relation to Biden's speech because the grasp that young adult fiction has on our culture. And Brian McClanahan went over the speech as well. He made the note that it pretty much has like a 6th grade reading level.
Meaning it's out of the grasp of most Americans.
Yeah.
You know that, right? Most 50%, I think it is, of a majority of Americans read below a 6th grade level. When I read that stat a few years ago, I was like, okay, we're done here. I can't, like, that's too much for me. I mean, that means they're functionally illiterate. Like, they don't read at all. God. And they can't write at all. So they're anyway, okay. Biden, functionally illiterate president.
Yeah. Well, again, like speeches used to be like the pinnacle of our language. Like it used to be like a rhetorical thing that you would look forward to. Like our great statesman is going to orate to us, and we're going to aspire to
you'd wait for the one turn of phrase that would become famous.
Yeah.
In the speech, it'd become known as the this or that speech, right?
Yeah, but he says, yeah. The assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality inflicted on the people of Ukraine, people that were very badly hurt since Putin launched his all-out invasion. Also, like the word "all out," like what is this? Like, is this like some invasion. Football thing from the?
Well, didn't he call Hamas the other team at one point?
Yeah, he did. He said Hamas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Joe, I don't think you're taking the terrorists seriously. They're a team now. When's that dude gonna croak anyway? He's not gonna make it, is he?
Well, I think he might. I think he has an
You think he's gonna make it?
Like, I think so.
You think he'll be functioning a year from now during the election?
Well,
a whole year, that motherfucker aging another year. Really? No, I don't think he's gonna make it. And that's why, segueing, Gavin is going hard, man. Gavin is doing like what do you call it? State visits to other countries now.
Yeah, as like again, he frames himself as though he's a president already. Like he's debating Ron DeSantis because he's already president. He's
the shadow president.
Yeah.
He thinks he is.
He's visiting China and Beijing to discuss climate change because he's the president of the world.
Wow, man. I mean, listen, if I were Joe Biden, but 30 years younger and better looking and smarter, I'd do the same thing. That's what Gavin Newsom is. He's just a more competent,
huckster,
more put together Joe Biden. Same politics.
Mhm.
I mean, no, Gavin has one foot in wokeness. So
One
he's not.
foot though.
Yeah, oh, just one. Yeah. Oh, he'll kill the Negroes in a second if they
Uh-huh.
cross him, but like he'll pretend to like them for a while.
And he's made a lot of pro-Israel statements.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
is
Oh yeah.
not
No,
with the left on Palestine.
he's establishment, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
totally establishment. But he has a foot in woke rhetoric at least, and he'll pass some crazy laws that are to appease the wokeness, the woke mobs here. I mean, I don't see how it's not going to be Trump versus Newsom. I just don't see. I mean, physically, I don't see Biden being able to do it, to do another campaign.
Well, did you see Jenna Ellis plead guilty? And it seems more like Trump's people who are implicated are taking plea deals and are
No.
implicating Trump. So maybe the lawfare might keep Trump in prison so he can't run.
Shit. I did not see that. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Plea deals. But what are the terms of the plea deals? We don't know, right?
Yeah. But she had this tearful statement and basically said, oh, Trump was the big, mean, bad guy.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, but he's got such a dominant lead.
Mhm.
And there's no reason he's going to, and he's been doing so well. Like as a politician, he's been really skillful. I think the last year, mostly. I mean, his tweets are still like off the wall, but he's made a lot of smart moves, and his lead is huge. And DeSantis just continues to collapse. Nikki Haley, oh my God, have you seen her tweets lately?
Oh,
about Israel?
Well, real quick, I have a Nikki
Wow.
Haley clip prepared. I think it's really relevant. Can I play? Yeah.
We should be doing three things. One, support Israel, whatever they need, whenever they need it, no questions asked. Two, eliminate Hamas. Don't weaken them, eliminate them, because if we don't, they will do this again. And three, do whatever it takes to get our hostages home. But see the bigger picture of all of this. There would be no Hamas without Iran. And look at what the bigger story of this all is. You have China and Russia name themselves unlimited partners. Iran is their junior partner. China is importing all of its oil from Iran, sending billions of dollars their way that they support terrorism with. Russia's getting drones and missiles from Iran. Look at the three. What do they all have in common? They all want to destroy the West, and they all hate America.
So she was right about everything until the last 6 words or whatever.
Mhm.
They all hate the West and they all want to destroy America. Oh yeah, China. You mean the ones who have been providing us with our diapers for 50 years? Are you kidding? Seriously? Have been like every single American has a house full of Chinese goods, but they want to destroy us, huh?
Mhm.
Iran, they want to destroy. If they wanted to destroy us, I wouldn't give a shit because they can't. And what would that look like? Iran, like what? Sending what? Troop transport ships across the ocean and landing their infantry on our beaches? What? And then establishing Sharia law when they seize our capitals? Like, this is nonsensical. So this is like 1990s foreign policy shit. And Joe Biden's speech was the same way.
Yeah.
It's the way they were talking like 30 years ago about stuff. Stuff has changed.
Yeah. Hamas instigated Holocaust 2.0, quote unquote, the worst attack on Israel since the Holocaust. Their actions echoed Russia because they both hate democracy. America is the leader of democracy in the world. They're both working with Iran. We need to start World War III to attack all three of these nations.
Yeah. I mean, she was right about everything until the last part about World War III.
Yeah.
Being necessary. Yeah. And then she's tweeting all this stuff about insisting that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, which I find, and we talked about this last week, just to be about the most offensive thing you can say to me. Don't have to get into it because I've made that argument before, and it should just be obvious for fucking sake. God, it's obviously not the same. In fact, I argue that they're antagonistic, that Zionism is anti-Semitic because it's killed so many Jews. I mean, here's another good number. I just found out. So during the war, during World War II, the United States did not allow any Jewish refugees in from Europe, to its great shame. But immediately after the war, Truman did greatly loosen immigration restrictions for Jewish refugees. So from 1945 to 1950, this is during the founding of Israel, 100,000 Jews from Europe, refugees, migrated to the United States of America. And I've known many of those people, Holocaust survivors, who chose to move to New York or Detroit or Los Angeles instead of Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. And guess what? Not one of those people was killed by an Arab. Not one single one. Not one Arab terrorist touched a hair on their head, unless they chose to move to Israel. So tell me again why Zionism is pro-Jewish. If you want to get a bunch of people killed, make them do what the Zionists did.
Yeah.
But the choice was made by the smart 100,000 people to move here. And that's it, man. That's what Israel's all about. If you want to be safe as Jews, move somewhere else. Most likely the United States, but most of Europe's fine too. There's been no pogroms against Jews since the 40s in Europe.
Nikki Haley had that tweet that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
She made her bones as governor, being the first to pass anti-BDS legislation.
Right.
Ron DeSantis, I believe, pressured some universities in Florida to disband some pro-Palestine groups on campus. And then there's some representatives who have brought up trying to codify anti-BDS legislation nationally.
I'm just wondering about Nikki Haley. So she was ambassador to the UN under Trump.
Ambassador to the UN. Oh, and this is another thing about the UN. Ben Shapiro brings this up all the time. The UN has had all these human rights violations, and 90% of them have been issued against Israel. And that's a sign that the UN is ravenously anti-Semitic, apparently. The entire globe has a bias against Israel. And
I'll tell you what, the globe would be a lot less anti-Semitic if Israel didn't exist. I guarantee that much. It's just stoked anti-Semitism. But no, they're not the same. But I'm just thinking about her. So what is she? She's Indian. Her parents are Indian immigrants. South Carolina, Republican.
Yeah.
UN ambassador. I think that she got that job because of her stance on Israel, because of Jared. I think Jared's a super Zionist. And I think that's why Trump was such a Zionist too. I wonder how passionate Trump is about Israel. He might be, but
I think he's become less passionate about it in recent years because he's realized he got nothing from it.
Oh, good. Smart man.
Yeah.
That's that business mind right there. Cost benefit analysis. Thank you. Please, more of that. Yeah. And I was also thinking about Trump and his foreign policy. And I do think he's right that things would be a lot better if he's president. He had a very peaceful run. I mean, he didn't start a war, and there just weren't major conflicts like this when he was in office. I don't think it was all because of him, of course, but I think some of it was. And I do think he has this way with diplomacy. There's this very particular form of diplomacy that Trump operates, but he's very aggressive about it. But he makes friends with these guys. He makes friends with what's his face in North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and he makes friends with Putin, and he makes friends with Xi. They respect each other, and I think that actually goes a long way. Whereas Biden doesn't even meet with these guys. Biden doesn't do any diplomacy. He just mumbles, insults at them in speeches. He doesn't talk to any of these guys.
Yeah.
And they hate his guts. Same with Saudi Arabia. MBS like hates his guts and let that be known. Whereas Trump went over there and made a couple of huge deals, which I'm not for, but like he has relationships with all these people. And I think that will go a long way. I do think there would be less, I think there would be less conflict with him in office. I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of leaders see him as a businessman.
Yeah.
Like I think it's just they respect a firm handshake, and I think they also value loyalty, and I think that's something that's big for Trump.
I think the big difference is that he's not ideological, which is about the American empire, about American exceptionalism. He doesn't, none of that. He doesn't believe in any of that like obligation to uplift the world bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly why they've gone after him since 2016. That's why Russiagate happened. That's why everything has happened. But it's also why I think he brings peace relative to his ideological predecessors and successor. Biden, all the other presidents have thought about foreign policy straight through ideology. It's all about extending the American empire and our obligation to, you know, establish and maintain Pax Americana around the world and bring American values and democracy to everybody and all that shit. Trump doesn't believe in any of that. And that's why they've been trying to take him down. So that's why I want him to be, I think is my preference to be president. Since Bobby Kennedy is like sucking Israeli dick, he doesn't seem to be terribly useful anymore.
I think he exists to take votes away from Trump.
His dad was assassinated by a Palestinian who was angry that Kennedy was going to support Israel. That the United States was going to support Israel at Kennedy's urging, at Bobby Kennedy Sr.'s urging. So you would think Bobby Jr. would have learned something from that. I guess not. Yeah, you think he's an op?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's establishment. I think he's friends with Biden. I think he always has been. He's always said nice things about Biden and Clinton. I think him dropping out of the Democratic primary and how much the press has softened up on him ever since he did that goes to show that I think he's attacking Trump from the right, actually, because Trump's biggest vulnerability is the vaccine thing. So a lot of right-wingers don't like Operation Warp Speed, don't like all the vaccine tyranny and COVID policies that Trump championed. And so, yeah, Bobby Kennedy can attack Trump from the right on that angle. Democrats won't care at all, and they'll vote lockstep Biden like they always do.
I think Bobby's dead. I mean, I just realized he's faded away like the last few weeks. Like Vivek actually managed to keep his name in the news even during all the Israel stuff.
Yeah.
By inserting himself on that issue. So he's been around.
Mm-hmm. I
haven't seen Kennedy at all. And I don't know. I just have this feeling that the wind's out of his sails suddenly.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's not going to win. Doesn't matter. And I just feel like no one cares anymore. I think we've heard this and we're done. And I also think that his super establishment take on Israel, which was before October 7th, by the way, I think that lost a lot of his support. You know, I mean, people like me, I was never a fan of his, but I would have been if he hadn't taken that position so stupidly, so uncritically. I don't mind. I'm okay with you being sort of like nominally pro-Israel, I suppose, but like he had all these arguments that are all nonsense and debunked and bullshit, and he had nothing to say on the other side. No, I think a lot of people like Max Blumenthal, like the Gray Zone guys, they were very interested in him and very serious about him and very sympathetic because of all of his stuff on Ukraine and the deep state and all that stuff. But then he came out with this Israel stuff and they're like, okay, we're not cool with you. Yeah. And that's a lot of dissident left people split from him when he did that. So I think it hurt him because that was a real major part of his base. If he doesn't have the dissidents, he's got nothing, I think. Anyway, who cares?
So Owen Schroyer got 60 days in jail. That's starting now.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going in now.
Yeah, he's going in now. I thought
What did he do?
Yeah.
Who did he kill or rape or pillage or murder? What?
I think it's. I'm not certain.
What was he
about,
convicted of? He didn't even go in, did he?
No, he didn't go in.
He didn't even go in.
Yeah.
Jesus. He was in the street doing what? Oh, he was fomenting insurrection. Is that what he was guilty of?
Yeah, it's a speech thing. I'm looking up if it was either like conspiracy or if it was incitement to riot, but he did not enter the Capitol building, and it's yeah.
Do you know how many people on the left have openly talked about revolution? Like my whole growing up in the left, we always talked about that. We love talking about revolution. Revolution's like a really cool word on the left. And we meant it. Like we wanted a revolution. And a lot of us wanted like a violent revolution with guns and, takeovers of capitals with guns. And then there were a lot of left-wing protests at places like state capitals, many of which involved like going into the Capitol. Black Panthers did it with guns. And no one has called those things insurrections. Those are by like Marxist revolutionaries, but no one called that an insurrection. None of these people were insurrectionaries or revolutionaries.
Mm-hmm.
They were just pissed off. I mean, it's just the whole thing is disgusting.
Yeah. So as the war on terror gets re-ramped up to fight this new quote unquote axis of evil of Russia, Hamas, and Hezbollah.
Oh, right.
And as speech codes are starting to be enshrined, and as the DOJ gets bolstered up again, I just want to warn Republicans that 5 years from now, when Trump gets back into office and January 6th happens again for some reason, this is going to be used against you again to throw you in jail and to make you political prisoners.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. He just established a new axis. So it was Biden in that speech connected Hamas, Russia, which is a really slick move, Iran.
Iran, yeah, Hezbollah, because Hezbollah funds Hamas.
Hezbollah.
And Russia drones with Iran.
So, and then he's in other places, Russia is connected to MAGA.
Yeah.
And Trump. Now, of course.
Russiagate, yeah.
Now, of course, MAGA and Trump are super pro-Israel, so it doesn't work. But nonetheless, that's also what he's trying to do there, right?
Yeah.
Make that part of the axis as well. So those are all the evil people, and they're all connected, even though they're not actually connected. Russia has like almost nothing to do with any of this stuff. Wow. God.
That's for me, like that's the entire Biden campaign and presidency has been to persecute Americans. Like it's been to establish the global American empire and all that. But like to do explicitly what he did in that speech, which is lump together all of the enemies and expand the state to persecute them. His first campaign ad was the soul of America in Charlottesville. Like he has like this lore where he goes back to January 6th, and then January 6th goes back to Charlottesville, and then Charlottesville goes back to the Holocaust, which was almost as bad as January 6th.
So, yeah, I'm wondering, I mean, I guess it's because they have felt genuinely threatened by MAGA. I wonder if they still, well, they do. Yeah. Because Trump, although MAGA has lost big time the last year or two, Trump has gained traction, but his movement oddly seems to be fading. Like I don't even watch the War Room anymore, really. I don't think they're really clicking anymore.
He's also giving speeches to gyms. Like he's giving speeches to he's not giving speeches to packed stadiums like he was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe he's not doing so well. I mean, it could just be fatigue. People are just tired of him. And tired of the whole thing, which, I kind of am. I was watching Gavin Newsom give his little talk in China, though, and I just thought, I don't know if I can handle watching this guy for 4 years.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard for me. He's rough. He's so slick and slimy and fake, and he's such a quintessential politician. He looks like, the picture in the dictionary next to the word politician. with the slick back hair. It's just something else. I don't know if I can do it.
The only thing worse than Biden with dementia is Biden without dementia.
Right. Exactly. No, that's what Gavin is. As I said, Gavin is a competent Joe Biden, which we don't want. You don't want him to be effective. At least, oh God, just listening to him talk. Yeah. Now the thing is, he is smart though. I mean, I have respect for his intelligence. I don't think Gavin Newsom's dumb at all. I think he's quite talented, intellectually and as a politician. I guess it's just, I always feel like he's captured by, the Democratic Party base and the donors and the institutions that control the Democratic Party. And I often wonder what he would say if he were really free, if he were just like, if he dropped out of politics and lived in the mountains as a monk for a while. I kind of feel like since he is smart and I think he is sort of introspective, he might actually have some things to say, but he's so captured it doesn't matter. If you elect Gavin Newsom, you're just electing the Democratic Party establishment.
He should be like running like some hip neoliberal winery or something, like
well, he did. That's what he did before.
Yeah.
He has this big winery wine company here that was financed by the Gettys, like everything in his life.
He should just do that full time.
Yeah. Hey, he looks the part.
Mm-hmm.
He should be like the maitre d' at like the best restaurant in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Gavin Newsom should be doing.
Have you seen, I think libertarian rhetoric plays well to like all sides in some sense. Like, I think most people are pro freedom in some sense. And I've seen his campaign messaging, even though it's not a campaign yet, all be about how the Republicans really want to take away your freedoms. Like your freedom over your body with abortion issues, your freedom over movement. Like he was talking about Texas putting restrictions on highways and transportations for abortions. And
right.
Yeah.
He went to the red states and making these blue state arguments, and I was like, is this gonna convince anybody? Like, what is this for? No, it's just a platform.
Yeah.
To launch his campaign from. The one thing we got to say before we go is he went to China and gave a speech there that was really interesting because, everybody's been bashing China in the establishment since the beginning of the Ukraine war. Since China and Russia established their no limits partnership, not Gavin. And this is good and interesting. Like he gave the speech saying, no, we should cooperate. And he wants to cooperate on things like climate change and something else stupid. But at least, he doesn't want war with China. And more than that, he wants actual cooperation. I think he actually used that word, which is great. I'll take that, even if it's for climate change, over what the Democrats and the Republicans are currently saying about China. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good thing. We'll see. Only
Gavin could go to China.
Yeah. He wears a suit well too. I like, he has a black and white suit thing that's like fire. All right. I'm going to go to deal with my voice, and we are going to go to Unregistered Live, cracking voice. If you want to join us, we hang out after Unreported every Thursday night. It's a Zoom meeting with patrons. You can be completely anonymous and you don't have to say anything or show your face at all if you want. Go to patreon.com/unregistered, become a patron at any level. Click the link and join us in Zoom for Unregistered Live after every Unreported. Thank you, Michael. I made it. Didn't think I was going to make it, but I did.
I should read the super chat before we go.
Okay.
Just wishing well to Fuego de Barcero over at Rumble. He said his godson is going to be deployed to Syria in December.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Okay. God bless. All right. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks. Peace.
At Unregistered Academy, we are announcing